Welcome to this troubleshooting walkthrough for Grandia II HD Remaster. This is atinypotato, and I'm going to be trying to get this unsupported game running on the Steam Deck. I've never actually played any Grandia games. This was recommended to me, but the art style very much reminded me of Clamp, Magic Knight, Ray Earth kind of stuff, so I thought I'd give it a go. Grandia II is unsupported on the Steam Deck, so the first thing we see when we launch is this warning from Steam that they're trying to work on it. According to Proton DB, it has a gold rating and should be easy enough to get going. Once I've waited forever for it to download on my wonderful DSL internet, I just tried to launch it straight away with zero tinkering. Unfortunately, all I got was this runtime error. I also, unfortunately, rarely ever read the full content of an error message, so I didn't even try to hit cancel and see what this wine debugger nonsense was about. My first troubleshooting step is going to be to force Steam to use a custom compatibility tool. In this case, I'm going to try Proton Experimental. This is a pretty basic first step to try on any game that isn't running on the Steam Deck. Unfortunately, since this is a pretty new Steam Deck, I have to download Proton Experimental before I get to relaunch, which might take a minute. I like to imagine, since my internet is so terrible, that instead of DSL lines, I just have a fireman-style line of squirrels passing data to each other trying to get to my cabin. It's a nice thought when I just spend ages staring at downloads, especially since the Steam Deck does not seem to download while asleep, which is painful. My next troubleshooting step that I saw on Proton DB was to head back to properties, but this time go down to betas, and it seems that there's a beta version of this game that you have access to that's called the Anniversary Edition. So I'm going to activate this beta and attempt to relaunch. So now we get to download more stuff. The squirrels are working overtime today. This time, I open up the Grandia II configuration launcher just to see what's going on in there. I'm going to go ahead and change the resolution to 1280 by 800, which I believe is the native resolution on the Steam Deck. I'm not going to change any other settings, just so that I'm only changing one thing at a time and see what works. So now I'm relaunching, this time Anniversary Edition instead of Remaster. Okay, we actually have logos this time. That's new, that's exciting, and a white screen. Okay. Okay, Grandia II Anniversary Edition. We have made it. I did have to go into the controller settings to figure out what the start button is in this game because I'm bad at controllers. It's the hamburger button on the top right of your Steam Deck if you're curious. Okay, we seem to have done it though. Very nice, very pretty. Things are actually happening. We are actually beginning the game, seeing some pretty artwork. I've done a couple battles. They're just your run-of-the-mill turn-based JRPG battles. I've come into town, talked to some people, and now I've wandered into this church, lured by the beautiful song of Elena. We're really getting introduced to this Ryudo character, who is our protagonist, if you want to call him that. Not gonna lie, his name is pretty fitting because this guy is pretty rude. I'm not gonna play any of the audio, but a lot of these parts are voice acted. My audio just got a little bit out of sync for some reason, and I don't want to fix it right now. Ryudo is just a really special character. He could not care less about anything. Father Carius is trying to pay him all of the money to protect his daughter and whatnot, but he's just annoyed constantly about everything. About God and about women in particular. Her fussiness. He has to escort her fussiness. Poor Ryudo. Poor man. Anyway, Ryudo is a geohound, which definitely puts a different image in my head of what he would be. Like a dude in a pith helmet picking up rocks? But no, he seems to be a mercenary, and everyone seems to hate him. I do wonder if the lore goes more into what exactly that name means in this world, but we haven't gotten there quite yet. Anyway, Ryudo and Elena head into the forest for her to perform some mysterious ceremony with a bunch of other young women from town, while Ryudo sits outside on a log with his filthy, unclean thoughts and his little bird friend. Needless to say, the ceremony does not go well, and Ryudo and Elena head back to town. Ryudo makes his feelings very clear by saying, "I can't stand God or women," which is just a lovely thing to say to a preacher, but cool. Ryudo and Carius's conversation is interrupted by Millenia, who I can't stop calling Melania because Trump lives rent-free in my brain. We apparently are going to battle her because we said something rude. What a shock that Ryudo would say something rude. We start this battle, and right away it's clear that it's meant to be unwinnable by design. Ryudo does absolutely no damage to Millenia, and she does a lot of damage to you with her powerful magic. One of the moves that Millenia does is called Zap, and it's pretty cool looking, and Ryudo ends up in this sort of matrix pose. Forever. And ever. The animations on the health bars are still going, and like I can press the Y button and that does something and brings up the play fair stuff, but he's just stuck in this matrix pose for ages, and I couldn't figure out if there was any way to kick things back into gear. So it was time to get back to troubleshooting. I exited the game through the Steam menu and headed into the config file. I'd seen on Proton DB that I could turn off run battles at max FPS. Unfortunately, I still cannot read and didn't realize that this setting was in fact present in the config already in the extra section and was set to on. This was in the Grandia II _settings.ini file, which I located by opening the Steam client in desktop mode and browsing the files on the local disk. I restarted the game and go back to my last save point, which was like 20 minutes before the Battle of Millenia. That might be an exaggeration, but not by much. Firmly believe that I have successfully turned off 60 FPS battles, so I reattempt the battle, only for Ryudo to once again get stuck in Matrix pose. I've still got my FPS locked at 30 on the Steam Deck, but that doesn't seem to be making any difference either. At this point, I received some excellent wisdom, which was that maybe before I launch the game again, I should actually open up the configuration launcher and double check my settings. So I launched that and uncheck 60 FPS battles, because that's what I actually needed to do, and I also turned on VSync for no particular reason. I'm just gonna hit OK and relaunch this from the config menu. And yes, I could have saved like an hour of my life if I had done this forever ago instead of trying to go into the config file. But alas, here we are, back again, going to the tower, sad ceremony, bringing her fussiness back home. This is the moment of truth. She's going to cast Zap and hopefully it works. And he's down. It's worked. Ryudo has finally been put in his place. Ugh. Poor man. Poor guy. Poor ego. So bruised. Okay, I think we've done it. From what I've read on ProtonDB, this should be the only major issue in this game, and I should be free to keep playing. If I come across any more major bugs, I will definitely post another troubleshooting video, but in the meantime, please subscribe for more Steam Deck content and give this video a like if you enjoyed my general inability to read and double check my work.